My name is Emily, and when I arrive, it's never with a quiet story. Not a tale of peace, not one that lets you rest easy. It's betrayal. It's forbidden love. It's the cost of survival. And this tale is no different. She was betrayed at 15, sold to a blind alpha king, her fate sealed in silence and shadows. Now, close your eyes. Imagine the storm. The kind that shakes the earth itself. The kind that makes even the strongest trees groan as though they are alive. Rain lashes down in sheets, cold enough to pierce through bone. Lightning slashes across the sky, white fire against an ocean of black. And in the middle of it all, a girl, barefoot, running. Every step cuts her open. The forest floor is thick with stones, sharp roots, mud that swallows her ankles whole. Her breath comes in broken gasps, the sound of a heart beating too fast for a body too small. 15 years old, and already she's carrying a weight most grown men could not bear. Behind her, wolves. Their howls split the storm, deep and merciless. Closer, closer. Every cry from their throats feels like a countdown, reminding her that she is prey. Her hair clings to her face, wet and heavy. Her skin is streaked with blood from branches that tore her as she forced her way through. The night seems endless, the shadows thick, the fog so dense she cannot see more than an arm's length ahead. And yet, she keeps running. In her fist, clutched so tight her knuckles are white, is a single token. A necklace. Cheap, worn, but heavy with meaning. It belongs to her stepmother's son, the boy she was traded for. She presses it to her chest as though holding it will keep her alive. As though holding it will justify why she is here. Alone, hunted, abandoned. But no token can stop the voices. They hiss through the storm like venom, echoing off the trees, wrapping around her ears until she cannot tell if they are real or madness. She is the sacrifice. Sell her to the blind alpha king. Let her blood pay the debt. She stumbles, her body crashing hard into the mud. The pain blooms sharp, but she cannot stop. She forces herself up, sobs shaking through her chest. Lungs screaming for air. And then her hands. They burn, not with fire, not with heat, but with light. A faint silver glow pulses from her palms, trembling like a flame starved of air. She stares at them, horrified, because she knows this is the very thing they all feared, the reason her own people whispered behind closed doors. The curse she never asked for, the silver flame, power, untamed, unwanted, and dangerous. It flickers, begging to be unleashed, but she doesn't know how. She doesn't know if it will save her or destroy her. And the wolves are still coming. Her chest heaves as she presses her glowing hands into the mud, trying to snuff out the light, praying no one sees. But in the distance, thunder answers. As though the heavens themselves have noticed her. The storm is no longer outside her. It is inside her. Every crack of lightning feels like her heart splitting open. Every gust of wind tears at the pieces of who she used to be. She isn't a child anymore. She isn't safe. She isn't loved. She is prey. And prey does not survive long. Her legs buckle again, her body trembling with exhaustion. The forest seems endless, every path leading only deeper into darkness. But she keeps moving, because stopping means death. Stopping means letting the world finish what it started when it sold her. 15 years old, betrayed, branded a curse. Running toward a fate no one survives, and somewhere ahead, waiting in the shadows, bound by prophecy, feared by all. The blind alpha king, so stay close. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will cut deeper than the storm. Hit subscribe to Olivia Werewolf Tales and tell me where you're listening from. because this one will haunt you long after the screen goes dark. Rain pounds the clearing like 1,000 small fists. The trees open into a circle of trampled grass and slick stone, a place where the forest keeps its breath. She bursts through the last line of brush, momentum dragging her forward until her knees hit earth. Mud folds around her shins, cold and greedy. The necklace bites into her palm. Her lungs claw for air and find storm. She tries to crawl, but her arms shake and give. The silver glow in her hands sputters, then steadies into a dull pulse, like a heart that refuses to quit. Around the edges of the clearing, shadows collect and separate. Wolves easing from the dark as if the night itself is exhaling them. Eyes in dozens of shades. Amber, iron, green, catch the lightning and throw it back. They circle without stepping onto the open grass. Respect or superstition holds them, or hunger measured against fear. She can't tell. She knows only that the nearest ones lower their heads and lick rain from their lips while their paws knead the mud with anticipation. Their breath steams. Their silence is a verdict. She clutches the necklace and drags herself onto her side. The world smears. Wind combs the grass in the center of the clearing, flattening it in one direction, then the other. The pattern reminds her of the way her stepmother's fingers used to smooth the tablecloth before speaking sharply. She swallows against the thought and pushes it away. The storm presses every sound to the ground. The drip from leaves, the soft thud of paws, the roll of thunder traveling through the soil into her bones. The wolves ease closer. One tests the invisible boundary with a paw, then another step. Its ribs show when it breathes. Rain beads on its whiskers. It lifts its head to smell her fear and finds plenty. Her hands flare again. Silver light beads along the lines of her palm, threading into the cuts on her skin like liquid wire. Heat doesn't come. Pain doesn't come. Only a sensation like pressure, as if the air around her has thickened and now presses back. She tries to pull her fingers into a fist to hide the light, but the glow leaks through. The ring of wolves tightens, their tails rise. The hungry one steps fully onto the grass, and then another joins it. She can hear the wet patter of rain on their coats. The nearest wolf's ear twitches toward the trees. The pack is listening for permission, for a signal hidden inside the storm. None arrives. She lifts her chin, mud streaking her throat, and meets the nearest gaze because looking away would feel like surrender. The wolf opens its mouth and shows a row of teeth as orderly as a comb. The air changes. It doesn't move. It deepens. The clearing inhales. Roots tense beneath the surface. Leaves flatten and hold. The wolves go still so completely that the rain hitting them is the only motion left. The nearest muzzle closes. Ears flatten. Tails sink. He is present before he is seen. Sound arrives first. Not footsteps, but the absence of them. A quiet that pushes the storm to the edges. Then a shape, taller than the brush, coalesces at the far side of the circle where the trees knit tightest. He doesn't part the branches. The branches appear to have already made way, bending just enough, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. He steps into the open. The rain seems to break around him. Not avoiding him, never that, but meeting him and changing its mind about falling. His hair is cropped close, black wetness against a strong skull. The skin of his face bears a scar that begins above the left brow and crosses the bridge of the nose in a pale notch, a history written in a single brutal line. His eyes, sightless, milked, unblinking, are turned toward her as if they know the shape of her breath. A thin strip of leather circles his throat, old and oiled. He wears no crown. He does not need one. The wolves lower themselves and slide back a pace, not in panic, not in theater, in recognition. The circle remains, but it is wider now, and its center has changed allegiance. He tilts his head slightly, the way a person listens to a voice far away, and the angle makes the scars stand out. He doesn't search the ground with his foot. He doesn't reach with his hands. He doesn't hesitate. He walks to the very middle of the clearing without a single misstep, placing his boots where stones won't turn under him, where roots won't catch. He anchors his weight like a man who has fought on shifting ground all his life and learned where earth will hold. She tries to push herself up, but her legs refuse. The silver in her palms flickers. He stops with a precision that feels like he knew her exact distance before he began moving. The blind eyes face her. Something passes through the wolves, a ripple that's not fear and not loyalty, but the uneasy cousin of both. It leaves their shoulders slightly lower than they were. He says her name. He doesn't cheapen it with questions. He doesn't soothe it with softness. He speaks it like a truth that has finally arrived. He speaks it with an intimacy that makes the hair rise on her arms. Her stomach drops. No one here should know her. Not in this deep wood, not in the storm, not tonight. The pack that sold her knows her name like a price. This man speaks it like a vow. Her throat strains to form a denial and finds none. He steps closer, and the fine hairs along her cheek sense his presence before the rain can announce it. She sees the milky eyes and knows that he must see nothing. Yet his gaze holds her the way a hand on the back of the neck holds a warning. Still yourself. What do you want? Isn't what forms in her mouth. A ragged breath is what comes. He hears it. His head turns fractionally to follow the sound, to locate her as cleanly as any sight could. The scar shifts when his jaw tightens. The nearest wolf dares the clearing again. The alpha doesn't move. He doesn't bare his teeth or bark in order. He merely exhales, a quiet that slides over the animal like weight. The wolf hesitates, fights an unseen pressure, and then yields, lowering its head until its muzzle touches mud. The rest of the ring loosens. Thunder walks its slow gait across the top of the forest, but down here, the world waits on his breath. He stops an arm's length from her and goes still. The rain on his shoulders darkens the coarse fabric of his coat, carving rivulets that drop and break against his boots. He keeps his hands at his sides, fingers open. He doesn't offer help, doesn't pretend this is a rescue without condition. Authority rolls off him without performance. He doesn't require the wolves to see him. The ground understands. He says her name again, quieter, as though confirming she is not an idea but a person. Then he adds words that land with the same certainty as the first. You ran too far to go back. The voice is deep, carrying sand at its edges, built for commands that others obey even when they hate themselves for it. She flinches anyway, not from his tone but from the implication. Back to what? Her mind answers with images, a doorway with a shadow in it, a hand pushing her to her knees, a table where her fate was counted out in coins that didn't belong to the men who paid them. The necklace cuts deeper into her palm. Blood slicks the chain. She doesn't open her hand. How do you know me? She hears the question before she understands she has formed it. It leaves her mouth as a ghost of sound, almost swallowed by rain. He turns his face toward the exact place her lips moved and stands more firmly, like he has just stepped onto a truth he expected to find. Because you aren't quiet, he says, even when you try to be. It isn't mockery. It is assessment. It walks her spine like a cold finger. The wolves stir, impatient with human talk, but none step forward. If they are hungry, they will wait for permission. If they are angry, they will wait longer. She drags herself upright on her elbows, mud thickening under her nails. The effort spots her vision. The silver glow threads her cuts with a steadier light now, as if her body has decided on survival without asking her consent. He senses the shift. She can tell by the way his head lifts, nostrils flaring almost imperceptibly, reading scent the way others read letters. The rain has no power over what he needs to know. "You've been followed since the river," he adds, and it is undeniable that he's right, because the heavy shape of arrival, rank with wet fur and iron breath, steps from the trees opposite him at that exact moment as if conjured by the sentence. This is not one of his. Its coat is darker, its eyes small and mean, its posture a collection of grudges. Two more appear on either side, and the ring that had kept distance closes a notch, not around her, but around him. The alpha doesn't turn his head. He speaks without raising his voice. "This clearing is mine." The rival alpha doesn't stop. It bares its teeth, a message carried in bone. The storm licks the edges of the moment with light. The air swells. The wolves that belong here lower themselves, muscles poised to burst into motion. Lightning forks so close the hair on her arms crackles. He doesn't move. He doesn't need to. The command that leaves him is old. A sound more felt than heard, stripped of words, made of timber and winter, and the memory of blood. It rolls through the pack like a wind that has learned how to choose its targets. The wolves around him press their chests to the ground and point their eyes at his boots. Even the rival hesitates. The forest listens, considers, adjusts. The rain finds a dozen new roots from sky to earth as leaves tremble. He turns his face slightly toward the rival at last. It's a small motion with consequences as final as any blade. "You trespass," he says. No threat follows. He is not collecting debt. He is acknowledging it. The rival's lip drops lower, revealing pink gums. It advances one stride, testing the line. Mud cups its paws and lets them go again. The alpha shifts his left foot a fraction, toes gripping inside the boot as if to feel the ground's oldest seam. He doesn't widen his stance. He simply finds the place where the earth can carry what he's about to do. He names her a third time and speaks it outward, beyond her skin, as if stitching that name to the clearing itself. "She is under my breath," he says, and the words land in the wolves' bodies like a rule they don't have to like to obey. The rival's head angles in frustration. It knows what the sentence means. Claim isn't romance here. Claim is law. The rival lunges anyway, a quick, ugly leap powered by hunger and humiliation. It is fast, and so is the lightning that bears the scene. The alpha answers with the simplest motion possible. One step forward through the center of the leap, not to meet it, but to erase the space it needs. He turns at the waist so the shoulder the scar lives above takes the brunt. His hand moves. No flourish, no clawed gesture. Just a line from center to edge that meets the wolf at the throat where growl becomes breath. He doesn't strike. He places. The rival hits an invisible stop and is forced to choose between resistance and survival. It chooses survival and drops, paws scrambling for traction. He doesn't pursue. He doesn't roar. He holds his hand in the air where the wolf's neck used to be, fingers spread like a gate, and every animal in the clearing understands it as clearly as a brand. The rival regroups with a furious shiver and backs to the tree line. The other two follow in a broken formation that shows they have stored away this humiliation and will nurse it. He lowers his hand. His chest rises once with the effort he allowed himself, and then goes quiet again. She is still on her elbows, every muscle trembling, the silver light bright enough now that it paints her face in ghostly relief. He turns toward it like toward a hearth he cannot see but can feel. He crouches slowly, letting his knees take the mud, bringing himself to the height of a person who expects to be looked down on and refuses anyway. He is close enough now that she can smell him underneath rain and wet leather. cedar and cold metal. A history of night air lives in that scent. "You're shaking," he says. "I'm not afraid," she says. And it isn't entirely true. He tilts his head. She thinks he might be smiling, then realizes the slight curl in his mouth is something harder to name. Approval without warmth. Interest without permission. "You should be," he says. "Fear keeps the pulse honest." The words bruise and steady at the same time. She forces herself onto her knees. The mud makes a sound like suction giving up. The necklace chain is slick with blood, but she still won't open her hand. Her hair sticks to her jaw. The storm has moved a little farther off, but not enough to change anything. "How long have you been waiting?" she asks, and the question is a stone thrown into water. Ripples move through him. Nostrils flare, shoulder shifts under soaked fabric, fingers flex once. "Long enough to know you'd reach this circle tonight," he answers. "Not long enough to know whether you'd still be breathing when you did." She tries to measure the truth inside the riddle and finds too little strength for it. "How do you—" she begins. And then the sentence ends because behind him, the rival pack regains nerve, slips along the trunks in a low arc, and tests the boundary again. Their silence is the only sign. The alpha doesn't turn, but the change in the air at his back folds into his posture. He stands in a single motion and answers their second attempt with less patience. "Home," he says to his own, and the word releases the wolves around the clearing like arrows cut from a string. They do not race forward with teeth flashing. They do not waste sound. They pour around him in two clean rivers of muscle, one left, one right, meeting at the far rim of the circle where the rivals hover. Impact is almost gentle, a correction rather than a slaughter. A shoulder collides with a shoulder, a muzzle pins a muzzle. A body takes a path away from the heart of the clearing. The message is delivered with efficiency. Not here. Not this one. Not now. He doesn't watch the work. He places himself between her and the moving edge of the world, and gives his attention to the only trouble that matters. The silver light trembles in her hands as if the presence of a greater force unsettles it. It wants direction. He wants something from it. Neither says why. "You don't control it," he says, not as judgment. He waits. "No." The admission tastes like rain and iron. "It controls me." "Only because you think it belongs to you," he says. "It doesn't. It belongs to your breathing, to the space between it." She bends her head because the idea is strange and because the tension in her neck won't let her keep it upright. "I didn't ask for it." "Neither did I ask to be without sight," he says, and there is no self-pity in it. We are given what makes others uncomfortable and told to use it quietly. That ends now. The clearing settles. The rivals retreat a final pace and vanish, not into fear, but into a promise to return. The alpha's wolves reform the original ring, looser now, panting softly, water dripping from their fur in steady threads. The storm loosens, too. The worst of it moves down the ridge, leaving a sky that still vibrates but is thinking about mercy. He turns back to her completely. The milky eyes fix on her face with uncanny precision. He reaches toward her with his right hand and stops before the space between them is gone. His palm faces her, open, empty. He doesn't ask permission. He gives an option. The necklace chain has cut a thin, angry line across her palm. She unclenches slowly. The token is a cheap metal charm in the shape of a sun with a chipped center. A little boy once believed it meant luck. She has tried to believe it meant reason. It has meant price. She lays it on the mud between them. It sinks part way and lies there, dull. He doesn't look down. He couldn't see it if he did. She watches him not looking and feels seen. "You were sold," he says, as if he cannot stomach the superstition that wrapped the act in noble language. I do not return purchases. The words hit like a slap and then land as something uglier. Truth. She recoils inside herself and then sets her jaw. Then I'll run. Again. You will, he agrees. But not tonight. There are debts behind you and teeth in front of you. Choose a roof until storms forget your name. I don't want a roof you control. You want to live, he says, and it isn't a question. She looks at the circle of animals who would tear her apart if he left. She looks at the trees that would give her paths she cannot survive. She looks at his hand suspended in air, palm open, not a promise of gentleness, but a statement of terms. The part of her that is still 15 years and small wants to fold into someone's protection. Any protection. The part that has been blamed for light wants to set the clearing on fire and walk away from the ashes. A third part, a new one, wants to hold both truths and not apologize for either. What do you want from me? She asks, and the grip behind the words surprises her. She isn't pleading. She is negotiating. Everything you don't know you have, he says, and the discipline not to spill it. If I refuse? He tips his head as if listening to a song that hasn't started yet. Then you'll make it to the next ridge before they take your throat, he says, and his honesty steals the breath she was going to spend on defiance. And they won't eat all of you. Some enemies prefer trophies. Her stomach turns. She hates that he used the image. She hates that it was effective. The silver in her hands steadies into a constant dull burn. The body preparing for a decision. The mind pretending it is about something else. He lowers his hand and reaches instead toward the mud where the token lies. His fingers don't grope blindly. They go where the necklace is. He lifts it, the charm clinking against his knuckles. He brings it closer to his face and turns it twice, not to see it, but to listen to how it is built. The metal ticks against his nail. This bought you, he says, and there's no disgust in his voice, only inventory. This will not keep you. He places the necklace back in her open palm as if returning a knife to its owner. The chain coils obediently. His skin does not quite touch hers, but the heat of it does. A small shock travels from palm to shoulder to spine, not electric, something older, something that remembers winter dens and summer rivers. You belong to me now, he says, and it isn't an intimacy. It's an administrative fact delivered with a blade's edge. By law, by scent, by choice in time. She hates the word and wants to test it at the same time. Belonging has been the shape of her life, belonging to other people's stories, punishments, bargains. She thinks of the wolves bowing without being asked. She thinks of the rival being turned with a hand like a door. She thinks of his voice saying her name like an anchor thrown into rough water. Say it again, she says before she can stop herself. He says her name. She breathes like someone surfacing. He hears the change and files it away in the quiet cabinet inside him where he keeps advantages and dangers together. Stand, he says. She requires both hands to do it. The silver light flattens and becomes a sheen against her skin, then sinks deeper, as if ashamed of being noticed. The world tilts to one side and then rights itself while her knees argue about the concept of balance. When her spine is fully raised, she feels smaller than she did on the ground. He is close enough to tilt his head and hear the water drip from her hair. Walk, he says, and it's not a command made for humiliation. It's a test. She makes one step. Mud releases it reluctantly. The wolves collectively hold breath without meaning to. She takes another step, and the world accepts it. He doesn't touch her. He aligns himself a half pace to her left, placing his body between her and the largest gaps in the circle, as if shielding her from wind she cannot sense yet. His blindness travels with perfect certainty. He knows where the stones are. "Why do you move like that?" she asks, and the question is not challenge now. It is bewildered study. Like the ground speaks before you step. "It does," he says. "You've never listened because you had to listen for footsteps behind you." They reach the lip of the clearing. The branches that had made way for him earlier still bend, respectful, uneasy. He steps through them and she follows, the leaves drawing thin, wet lines across her arms without malice. The ring of wolves flows around to form a moving perimeter, silent as dark water. The storm withdraws another degree, leaving a trembling hush in its wake. As the forest closes behind them, the clearing disappears as if it were never there. The path is a suggestion more than a line, but he takes it with the same ease he took air. She notes how he turns his head to read the underside of the rain sound, how his fingers lift when the trunks narrow, how his pace shortens a fraction at the edge of a drop she would have found by falling. He is not avoiding the world. He is inside it. "You knew I would come," she says. It is not romantic. It is accusation wrapped in awe. "How?" "Because the ones who sell children never test the leash," he says. "They tie it to a tree too close to a road. The world does the rest." She grips the necklace. The chain creaks. "I wasn't on a leash." "You were expected to behave like you were," he answers, and the distinction cuts deeper than the storm ever did. They walk until the rhythm of their steps replaces the memory of running. Her body begins to locate itself inside fatigue rather than under it. The silver flare becomes a quiet ember along her lifelines. The wolves around them remain shadows with breath. Once, one brushes her calf with its flank, a contact so quick it might have been an accident. The heat of it lingers. She does not look down. She does not want to know which eyes claim that courtesy. "Why do they stay back?" she asks. "Because they don't want to be first to explain why they touched what's mine," he says. The words carry no pride. He is stating a rule the way people state weather. "What am I to you?" It should be too bold. She asks it anyway. "A responsibility," he says. "A weapon if you learn. A liability if you won't." "Not a mate," she says, and the forest takes the word and tucks it under a leaf as if to let it grow on its own time. He doesn't answer for several steps. "Not yet," he says finally. "Not never." Heat prickles along her neck that has nothing to do with exertion. She hates the reaction even while she tries to hold it still. "I don't want—" "You don't know what you want," he says, and though the sentence would be an insult in another mouth, in his it is anatomy. "You've only known what others fear. That isn't wanting." They pass a place where the trees grow older and the ground grows soft with years. He slows and reaches toward her without touching, a courtesy that makes refusal possible and therefore unnecessary. She steps over a fallen trunk that would have torn her shins open. The necklace charm clicks against her knuckle in gratitude that has nothing to do with luck. "What happens if I choose not to stay?" she asks, because her mind refuses to let go of doors. "You'll try to run at dawn when the world believes itself kind," he says. "There will be fewer wolves on the road, but the men who hunt with knives will be fresh and rested. And if I stay?" "You will hate me for a time," he says. "And then you will hate the parts of yourself that like the safety. If you're strong, you'll hate neither, and learn to use both." They crest a low ridge. Beyond it, the forest opens into another shape of night. The storm has left a lake's worth of water caught in the canopy, releasing it in soft, constant drops that make the darkness sound alive. A structure sits in the hollow, not a house and not a den. It is stone and timber set into earth in a way that tells you it will last longer than the people who sleep inside it. No light shows in any window. The place has an economy of presence that ignores the need to be seen. He pauses at the edge of the descent, as if asking the ground a question and receiving an answer. Then he angles down the slope, choosing a path with his feet that her eyes wouldn't have found in daylight. The wolves peel outward to take positions she doesn't understand and doesn't need to. She follows because the only alternative is the dark behind. At the doorway, he stops and faces her again. The milky eyes are not blank. They carry intention the way polished bone carries history. Rain ticks from his jaw. His hands remain empty and visible. Inside, you do exactly what I say until your breathing learns the shape of this place, he says. You speak only when you mean to. You touch nothing that isn't handed to you. You keep that light where it is unless I tell you to move it. You think I can move it, she says, and even in the exhaustion she hears hunger ignite on the word, can. I think it will move with the truth of your voice, he says, not the volume, the truth. If I fail? You will fail, he says. Then you'll learn. And if I don't want to belong to you? The question returns because it doesn't know where else to go. He stands in silence long enough that the rain fills the time. When he answers, his voice has shifted, still iron, but closer to a hearth's depth than a spear's point. Then belong to the choice you make next, he says. But make it fully. She looks past him into the wide dark of the doorway and feels the world inside the walls, vast without echo. She hears a low sound somewhere within, fire turning wet wood into heat. She hears a higher one, metal cooling after being placed back where it belongs. She hears her own breath and how it doesn't match either sound yet. She balances the weight of the token in her palm and the weight of his claim in her chest and is surprised that the latter is the heavier. The silver in her hands brightens a fraction. He senses it. His mouth tightens, not in worry, not in anger, readiness. Careful, he says, softer than any word he has given her tonight. It answers to panic first. She lets her shoulders drop a degree. The light subsides, not shamed, not dismissed, resheathed. He nods, the smallest tilt, as if a lesson has been learned without being named. He steps aside from the doorway. The movement carries both invitation and ownership. She crosses the threshold. The air inside is warmer by degrees. Stone catches the storm and keeps it outside. The scent of cedar deepens. The wolves do not follow. They settle in the rain where they are and become landscape again. He stays just inside, close enough that if she tried to bolt, he could catch her without trying. He doesn't close the door. He doesn't need doors to keep things. His presence is door enough. You'll sleep, he says. In the morning, we'll begin. What will we begin? She asks, braced for a word she won't accept. Undoing what they did to your breath, he answers, and teaching your hands what to hold. She looks down at her palms. The silver sulks under the surface, unwilling to admit it wants to be anything other than trouble. She flexes her fingers and feels tiny threads tug at her skin where the light had stitched her cuts. The necklace lies against her lifeline like a question mark that finally surrendered and became a hook. He turns his face toward the room on their right. She hears the soft scrape of a chair moving by a person who knows exactly where each leg meets the floor. You belong to me now, he says again. Quieter. The formality of it less like possession, more like shield. By my breath, by my house, by the choices you make under both. Don't make me regret it. She lifts her chin. The fatigue has edges sharp enough to cut itself. I won't belong quiet, she says, and the sentence surprises them both with its spine. No, he agrees, and for the first time tonight, something like the shadow of relief crosses his scar. You'll belong loud enough to live. He steps deeper into the room, and she follows because the alternative is the storm and everything that wanted her bones. Behind them, the threshold holds the night like a line drawn in the ground. The house listens to their steps and decides to keep them, at least for now. Outside, the wolves resume breathing. Somewhere along the ridge, the rival alpha lifts its head and memorizes the sound of rain on stone. It will return. The world always does. Inside, a blind king teaches his feet to the floor again, and a girl who burned against her will learns to lower the blade without dropping it. Between them, in the space where breath becomes decision, something new begins to take a shape with teeth. He doesn't say welcome. She doesn't ask for it. The storm weakens to a memory pressed against the windows. And the house fills the silence that follows with the knowledge of a law just written. She is under his breath now, rescued not by tenderness, but by a warning backed with the force to enforce it. And if she runs, it will be into a world that knows her heat and wants it for trophies. If she stays, she will learn to put the fire where it belongs. He turns his head like a man cataloging rooms. Left, he says, and begins to walk. She matches his pace and discovers that her legs, traitors a moment ago, have decided to trust the floor. The necklace settles against her skin, no lighter, but different. Her hands dim until the dark holds all the light without help. Behind them, the door remains open to the night, not out of carelessness, but because nothing outside has the nerve to cross the line while he is awake. The wolves settle into the kind of sleep that knows how to wake running. The forest reorders itself around the absence of a chase. And the blind alpha king, scarred and sightless, moves through his own hall with the certainty of a hunter who never needed eyes, keeping the radius of his presence around the girl like a boundary you can feel without touching. He didn't come to save. He came to claim. He didn't come to love. He came to keep alive the one thing the world would rather see buried. She keeps breathing. The breath keeps the light where it belongs, and the night, finally, allows itself to end. The house settles around her like a creature that has learned to breathe without being seen. Stone walls hold the last echoes of the storm outside. She follows him down the hall, each of her steps dragging the mud of the forest across polished stone, leaving a trail that feels like confession. He doesn't turn to notice. Or maybe he notices everything, even the things she tries to hide. She keeps her eyes on his back, on the way his shoulders move, steady, unhurried, as though no storm could rush him. No enemy could break his stride. And yet it isn't his walk that stays with her. It's his words, the ones he spoke in the clearing. You belong to me now. Cold, commanding. But then softer. I see you. That sentence clings to her skin like a brand. Not because it was tender, not because it was warm, but because no one had ever spoken it. Not once. Not in 15 years of breathing. She has been seen, yes, watched like a problem, observed like a danger, but never seen. The thought presses her inward, down through layers of memory she had tried to bury. She remembers the pack house of her childhood, its walls too thin for secrets, its corridors always carrying whispers. They never whispered about her with pity, only fear. Children weren't allowed to play near her. Mothers would pull their sons away, their hands clamped too tightly on small shoulders, eyes flicking to the strange shimmer in her veins when the moonlight hit them. The first time she shifted her hand in anger, barely a flicker of light leaping across her palm, her father's face had changed. Not in awe, not in pride, in dread. That look became her inheritance. At 5, she learned the weight of silence. At 8, she learned the weight of isolation. At 10, she learned the weight of shame. The memory drags her deeper. Her father's death left her with a stepmother whose smile was a knife wrapped in silk. The woman's love was rationed like food during famine, never enough to sustain, always enough to keep you dependent. Her son, golden-haired and sickly, absorbed it all. She watched every scrap of kindness go to him like a feast while she was left gnawing on shadows. When his illness worsened, when the pack healers shook their heads, her stepmother's eyes had landed on her like an accusation. She can still feel the sting of that gaze, the way it slid over her skin as though stripping her down to barter. "You will save him," the woman had said. "Not by magic, not by medicine, but by sacrifice." The bargain struck in whispers and coins. Trade the cursed girl to the one who would pay in power, and the boy would live. Her stepmother never asked if she wanted to go. She never asked if she wanted to survive. That night still breathes in her chest, the cold hand on her arm, the door closing behind her. The silence of her own pack as they watched her led away. Not one voice rose in protest, not one face turned in grief. Nights followed where she cried under the blood moon. Alone, hidden in the woods when no one wanted to hear her weeping. She remembers the metallic taste of tears mixed with blood from biting her lip to stay quiet. The moon never answered her, only stared down like a witness refusing to intervene. She dreamed of freedom then, not of castles, not of crowns, but of running until her lungs collapsed and no one could drag her back. Every dream ended the same. She would reach the horizon, only for her hands to blaze with the silver flame, and the earth itself would recoil. The flame, her curse, her inheritance, her prison. The old stories had named it destruction. Wolves whispered that her bloodline had once burned villages, that her ancestors left ashes where families should have been. She grew up hearing the phrase spat like venom, the silver flame that destroys. Even the elders said it with a kind of satisfaction, as though her existence justified their fear. She tried to hide it, smother it, pretend it was nothing but imagination. But the flame answered when she was frightened, when she was cornered, when she was desperate. And each time the stares grew colder, the whispers sharper, until even children half her size looked at her as if she were a monster to be leashed. Never trusted, always watched. Her throat tightens as these memories press against her ribs. She grips the token harder. The charm of her stepmother's son now crusted with her own dried blood. The irony tastes bitter, her freedom traded for the boy's survival. Her worth measured not in who she was, but in what she could buy. And then, his voice cuts through the memory. "I see you." Two words that dig into her the way lightning digs into earth. No one else had said them. Not her father, not her pack, certainly not her stepmother. They had seen only danger, only shame, only leverage. But him, the blind alpha king, scarred, sightless, terrifying, he had spoken the words as if they were fact, as if he knew the shape of her flame better than she did. She hates the way it unsettles her defenses, hates that some part of her, broken and starved, leans toward the sound of it. But she cannot deny the pull, because what if he truly sees? What if behind the curse, behind the shame, behind the silver flame, there is still a girl worth more than sacrifice? The thought burns hotter than the flame in her hands. It frightens her more than the storm. She follows him deeper into the house, but inside she walks through the ruins of herself. Every rejection, every betrayal, every whispered curse trailing like wolves that will not release the hunt. And yet, for the first time, she feels something else between the shadows. A possibility. Thin as smoke, fragile as breath, but alive. And it is born not from safety, not from kindness, but from that single sentence echoing in the marrow of her bones. "I see you." The storm had moved on, but the night was far from quiet. Its silence was deliberate now, a stillness that waited, as if the forest knew where they were going and did not dare disturb it. The wolves padded in formation around them, their paws whispering against damp earth, their eyes shining with moonlight. And ahead, cut into the hillside like a wound that had never healed, lay the shrine. Moonlight fell straight across its face, silvering the carvings etched into stone older than memory. Pillars half swallowed by moss leaned at angles that suggested time had tried to erase them and failed. Each line carried history, each curve of symbol carried weight. The air was colder here, not from the storm, but from something ancient, something that demanded reverence whether one wished to give it or not. She paused at the threshold. Her breath fogged before her lips, though the air around was not that cold. Her skin prickled, her wrist burned. When she lifted her hand, she saw it. The mark. Usually faint, usually hidden, now pulsing with the same silver fire that haunted her palms. The lines stretched and bent like a living thing, matching, impossibly, the carvings etched into the shrine walls. The Alpha stopped with her. His blind eyes turned toward the mark, though he could not see it. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The way he stilled, the way his scar tightened with memory, told her he recognized this place, this moment, this mark. She swallowed against the lump in her throat and stepped forward. The shrine seemed to exhale as she entered. The wolves did not follow. They sat at the edge of the clearing, heads lifted, throats opening in a low, layered howl. The sound was not feral, it was ritual. A chorus, old as the stones, carrying the weight of prayer and warning both. She stood inside the circle of light, surrounded by walls carved with spirals, flames, and eyes that never closed. Her own mark burned brighter until it hurt to look, and in the ringing silence, words surfaced, not from lips, not from voice, but from the very marrow of the place. The one with the flame shall blind the blind and heal the broken. Her knees almost buckled, her heart twisted inside her chest. The words felt wrong on her skin, like a prophecy sewn to the wrong body. She wanted to scream that she was not chosen, not savior, not flame of anything but ruin. She had been traded for survival, treated as a curse, cast out by those who should have protected her. She was a girl with bloodied feet, not destiny carved into bone. Her throat tightened until her voice scraped out. This isn't me. I'm not what it says. I'm not anything. The words tasted like mud, bitter and heavy. I'm a cursed girl they wanted gone. That's all I am. But the shrine did not agree. The mark on her wrist seared. The carvings on the wall answered, glowing faintly, echoing her flame with their own. She staggered back, horrified, until she hit the stone pillar at her spine. The truth was carved around her, unshakable, and it recognized her whether she wanted it or not. The Alpha stepped closer. His sightless eyes lifted to the glowing symbols. He did not touch them. He did not reach for her. He stood in silence, the kind of silence that held weight, the kind of silence that said he knew this moment long before it arrived. Reverence shaped his posture, not surprise, not fear, reverence. And that unsettled her more than the prophecy itself, because he was not doubting, he was not resisting, he was not even questioning. He accepted, as if he had been waiting for her flame to find its reflection, as if he knew exactly how the story was meant to unfold. She shook her head, voice cracking. You don't understand. I burn things. I break them. I destroy. They told me. I know what they told you, he interrupted, his voice steady, unyielding. But prophecy doesn't care what they told you. It doesn't care what you believe. Her chest collapsed with a sob, hot against the cold night. I'm not a savior. Not yet, he said. And those two words cut through the night like a blade through fog. Not yet. Not never. The shrine hummed. The wolves howled. The moon carved every shadow sharper. She stood caught between denial and destiny, her cursed flame trembling inside her, and the blind Alpha King beside her. Scarred, sightless, and reverent, waiting as though he knew her doubts were the beginning of something far greater than she could yet bear. The shrine had barely finished humming when the ground trembled under heavier steps. The wolves at the edge of the clearing snapped their heads toward the tree line. Their howls cut off mid-note, replaced by a warning growl that rolled through their chests like thunder born inside bone. She froze, her mark still blazing, her back pressed to the stone pillar. The Alpha did not move. His blind eyes faced forward, his scar pale against the moonlight, his stance carved into stillness. But his wolves shifted, restless, uneasy. Not in fear, but in recognition. Then the trees broke. Dark shapes poured through, their shoulders broad, their eyes alight with rage. Rival alphas, their coats bristling, their breath carrying the stench of old blood and hunger. They moved with the certainty of men who had come not to test, but to take. The first growl cracked the air like a whip. Another answered it. Snarls tangled with the cold night until the shrine's silence shattered. The rival wolves circled, claws scraping stone, teeth flashing in moonlight. And then the voices rose, human, harsh, cutting. "She is the cursed flame," one spat, his voice carrying across the clearing like a spear. "Do you not see what glows on her skin?" "She will destroy us all," another shouted, stepping forward with a hand lifted toward her, not in plea, but in accusation. His eyes burned with the fury of belief sharpened into weapon. Prophecy twisted. It does not bless. It condemns. The words sliced deeper than the claws raking stone. Every syllable sounded like the whispers she had grown up hearing, amplified now by the fury of men who wanted her gone. Her breath caught, chest constricting, memories of her pack's rejection crashing against her ribs. The Alpha remained silent. His stillness was sharper than any blade, but silence could not shield her. The rival pack pressed closer. One elder, his hair silver with age, stepped into the moonlight, his face drawn with conviction. "Send her away. Now. Before she poisons us all. If you will not cast her out, then you choose her over your own blood." Her heart clenched. The words weren't spoken to her. They were spoken to him. The Alpha. She turned her head toward him, desperate, searching for certainty, but his expression did not change. His blind eyes stayed forward, unreadable. His jaw clenched once, then stilled. The weight of his hesitation hit her harder than any claw could. Because he was deciding. The air itself thickened. Wolves growled from every direction, their fury rising, their bodies coiling to spring. The rival alphas barked challenges, claws digging into the shrine floor. The sacred place shook with chaos, physical and social, bone and voice, all converging on her. She wanted to scream that she was not what they said. She wanted to show them the girl behind the flame, but her throat was stone, her chest a cage. The silver fire burned brighter against her wrist as if mocking her weakness. And then, his silence cut her open. He did not defend her. He did not condemn her. He stood, caught between his people and her, between prophecy and pack. The pause was enough. It told her everything. Her chest hollowed, her stomach dropped. The truth tasted like iron. She was alone. Again. "Leave," an elder snarled at her, his voice shaking the shrine. "Go before your fire turns on us. Leave, or be cast out in blood." The words ricocheted through her skull. Leave, leave, always leave. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. She stumbled backward toward the edge of the shrine, every muscle trembling, her hands burning with light she could not control. The wolves parted to make a path, their eyes locked on her, not with pity, not with mercy, but with the hunger of those who smelled weakness. The alpha did not call after her. He did not stop her. His silence was worse than rejection. It was absence. Her throat burned as she staggered into the trees, her blood pounding, her vision blurred with salt. She clenched her fists until the mark seared her flesh. She swore into the night, her voice too low for them to hear, but loud enough for her bones to remember. If they think me a curse, I'll prove them wrong. The shrine behind her roared with wolves and war, but she did not look back. She carried her vow like a blade pressed against her heart, sharp and merciless. And the forest swallowed her once more. The forest took her without protest, swallowing her footsteps in wet leaves and breath. She kept to the slope until the ground loosened under her palms and the hillside opened its mouth, a seam of rock split by old water, half hidden by ferns. She squeezed sideways through the crack and felt the earth close behind her. The air inside was cool and metallic. She waited, listening for pursuit, counting heartbeats until numbers fell apart.